Welcome back to the Rock Your Best Life podcast. With me today, I have the wonderful Dr. Barb Woegerer. I hope I'm saying that right.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Yes, and she is a naturopathic doctor, and she specializes in magnesium, which I'm really excited to learn more about. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And of course, talking about my favorite mineral, magnesium. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to kind of share the wealth of information on this really important mineral and one that's often overlooked in a lot of areas of our health.
Well, and I'm really excited to learn, first of all, for people that don't know, what is a naturopathic doctor? For some people
Right.
that might not know, I guess.
Yes. So a naturopathic doctor is basically, we have the medical training. So we go to school, we have to have an undergrad and then go to school for 4 more years. And we basically do all the sciences and the medical information that most doctors do. And then we also learn the complementary or alternative side of medicine as well. So we are able to look at allopathic type conditions, and then treat them from a more holistic perspective. So, yeah.
Yeah, which I'm, my audience is right along the lines with, and as I am too, having healed myself, through food and lifestyle and, you know, finding the supplements that can help us is sometimes really hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having somebody like you in the mix can really help us kind of guide us, right?
Yes. Yes, that's what we do. And yeah, so I mean, we're not anti-allopathic. We work alongside allopathic medicine, and there's just sometimes we can intervene and do some things that can help either A, mitigate side effects, or B, potentially even come off of certain allopathic medications. But we have a very holistic overview, but from a very researched and evidence-based like background kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I love people that can kind of intertwine because I both, I see a regular doctor and then I like to see like, a natural doctor to help and like acupuncturist. I like to see them all.
Yeah, for sure. They're all good to have on your team for sure.
Yes. Well, what got you interested in magnesium? Because I know you talk a lot about magnesium on your Instagram, which I love. I've gotten so much education from you. And then you have an ebook, a 50-page ebook on your website, all about magnesium. So what got you interested in this miracle mineral?
Well, unfortunately, most times patients come to an alternative or a complementary naturopathic doctor or somebody outside of the allopathic field. It's usually they come to us with a last resort kind of thing, like, okay, I've tried everything and now I'm here, and what can you do for me? So when I first got involved with it, I would see a lot of these patients, and so they had tried many different things. And the one thing, I mean, you really have to dig deep when you're kind of looking at a situation where they have gone through a lot of different treatments and they haven't worked and stuff like that. And so I just started like researching and going down these rabbit holes, and every single one of them kind of led me to, this magnesium deficiency and how important this mineral was to our body. And it honestly, we learned almost zero about it in school. Like when I went to naturopathic medicine school, we learned minerals, yes, but we didn't learn them individually. So we didn't really know what calcium and magnesium, like how much they play in our body. But so I was really fascinated with that. And then I started doing more and more research on the actual mineral, which then kind of got me more focused on different types of conditions that involve this mineral. And from there, it's really transpired into what it is today. And, like you said, my Instagram account is primarily about this mineral, because I feel like we don't get that education. And for the general public, they don't get that education. It's not really out there in print. Not everybody wants to read a research study, obviously. And I just thought, you know what, it's my time and my duty and my, wanting to get this out there and share and create the awareness around this mineral.
Yeah, I agree. And like I think I first heard about it. I started having a lot of health issues that were just strange and unexplained about 6 years ago. And I started to hear a little bit about, if you drink a lot of wine, a lot of women have magnesium deficiencies. That's the first thing I heard about because I had my fingers were swelling up and my feet would swell up at night when I would drink, wine. But I learned later on it wasn't just that. I had to eliminate a lot of things. And then I heard, you just need to eat a bunch of spinach because it has magnesium in it. And so I started eating all the spinach, but some things improved. And then I ended up with these other things that were happening that were not good.
Right. Yeah. You can't do this in isolation, right? Like it's always part of a bigger picture. And that's what I really love about naturopathic medicine. Naturopathic medicine doesn't look at anything in isolation. It looks at everything as intertwined. So, our body is like not one distinct organ that we have to look at. It's more like a connection between all the other organs. So yeah, it's nice that we get to do that because in medicine, in allopathic medicine, if you go to the doctor and you have XYZ wrong with you, they're looking at just XYZ. They're just looking at, maybe it's your digestive issue. So they're going to send you to a gastrointestinal, but they don't look at like, okay, how much stress are we going through? How much, what are we eating? These things are not explored usually.
Yeah. I've seen that to be true for me and, so many other people that I help too. Well, maybe you can help us, first of all, explain what are, the different kinds of magnesium, and then what are those kinds used for, or how do they help our body?
Yeah, so this is where probably the most confusion comes in is on the different forms, because unfortunately there's a lot of forms of magnesium. I believe there's like 16 or 17 different forms, and we're not going to talk about all of them because a lot of them are not relevant to the general population. But the top ones that I would like to address are ones that we use quite frequently and one that we want to kind of stay away from. So maybe I'll start with that one. That's the magnesium oxide. And so the oxide is, and this is what, unfortunately, magnesium oxide is a very inexpensive, easy and cheap magnesium that they put on store shelves. And we really have to pay attention and read the label, because a lot of the times they'll also mix it into a blend of magnesiums. And the problem with that is that we don't know how much of that blend is actually oxide because they don't tell you. So if it's 200 milligrams, you could potentially have 195 milligrams of oxide and 5 milligrams of the real magnesium, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if I see oxide, unless I know that it's been like homogenized, because sometimes they'll do that if they separate it into buffered or chelated. But other than that, oxide, we don't want to use it. We can't absorb it. We absorb less than 5%. It causes digestive upsets and you'll just end up going to the bathroom. And that's pretty much it.
Oh, wow.
So that one's one we want to stay away from. Then we have magnesium citrate, and this is a commonly used form of magnesium, and it's got good bioavailability. It helps to support digestion. I use it a lot for GERD or acid reflux. It's also great for migraine headaches. There's a study that shows 600 milligrams can really help with migraines. And we also use it for constipation. That's its
Oh,
biggest use.
yeah.
So you will want to usually take it at night before bed, and then it seems to do its job the next day. It draws water into the colon, and so it allows for bowel movements to happen. It is, if you take too much, it can cause loose stools. So we have to be careful, and we have to usually titrate up. So it's something that you don't want to kind of start at 600 milligrams because you might have very loose bowels. So you want to kind of start 200, maybe 150, and then move your way up from there. The next form is a really popular form. It's bisglycinate.
Mhm.
And bisglycinate is probably one of the most popular forms now, prior to citrate, or prior to bisglycinate, citrate was the kind of common form. And again, bisglycinate is really bioavailable. It's well tolerated as far as digestive issues or anything like that. And it has very minimal laxative effects. So with bisglycinate, you can start a little bit higher and not have the same loose bowel movements that we see with citrate. And what's nice about bisglycinate is that it is connected to or contains two glycine molecules, and that is an amino acid that is known for its calming effect. And so it helps to, calm the nervous system down. It's great for stress. It's great for sleep. It's great for detoxing, all of those things. I use bisglycinate actually a lot. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then we have magnesium malate. So this one is quite specialized, and I use it in individuals who, so fibromyalgia, a lot of the times we see very low energy, we see a lot of joint and muscle pain. So I use it with these individuals, chronic fatigue syndrome. I use it with those individuals because, again, we have to remember that magnesium is part of ATP. It creates or improves ATP production, which is our energy.
Okay.
So, and again, it's well absorbed, and it causes minimal digestive upset, but I really keep it for those types of conditions. And then I think the other one that I use a lot is magnesium threonate. And so this is the form of magnesium. It's the only form that can cross the blood-brain barrier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's very much for cognitive brain function use. It's great for early stages of dementia. They found that even in a 12-week study, they were able to reduce aging by 9 years. So it's very good for
Wow. That's
cognitive,
impressive.
memory, mood, those kinds of things. Anything that's really brain and brain health related, depression, anxiety, these things are really good. And so I've been using threonate quite a bit in those types of patients. And then, of course, we have sulfate, which you would know as Epsom salts, right? So this is what you're putting into bath water, and you are absorbing it through the skin. And there's a lot of benefits from that. Detoxification. It's obviously a very relaxing, calming kind of form of magnesium. It also helps with joint pain and those kinds of things. But we don't know exactly how much you absorb from that. So I might absorb more than you might absorb less. Like, it just depends. It's very individual. And so we don't often go with just this type of magnesium because it's very, very difficult to gauge how much you're actually getting.
Yeah, I've experienced that a little bit. Just I have trouble detoxifying. And so I would take a lot of these Epsom salt baths, and I would find sometimes it would really help me and get the thing moving, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then other times I wouldn't have that same benefit, so
Yeah.
it was kind of different each time.
Yeah. And I think that it is like that with most individuals. We just don't know. And you might just absorb more at one point than another. And so it's not something we heavily rely on for if I'm trying to treat something based upon using a magnesium supplement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really quantifiable, kind of.
Yeah.
So how would we know as an individual or like a patient, if they came in to see you, what are the kind of the top signs that maybe somebody is really deficient and they're kind of, and it's causing them, to have, you know, not optimal health?
Yeah, well, we have to remember that magnesium's involved in over 700 enzymatic reactions, close to 800 actually now.
Wow.
So it has its hand in a lot of different things in the body. So a lot of the magnesium deficiency symptoms also sometimes pertain to another health condition. And this is why it's often overlooked. And so in these conditions, it's not usually the first line of treatment. And so when I see people coming in with a lot of joint pain, cramping pain, mood disorders, so anxiety, depression, low energy, hormone issues. We see sleep issues, insomnia, even bone health, osteoporosis, those kinds of things, that high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, stress. These are all things that I would like now be looking at. Okay, let's look at how much magnesium you have available and what do we need to do to support that. So but those are kind of like the big kind of categories. But like I said, a lot of those can fall into other health issues. And so most times we don't think of magnesium right away. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if somebody is having some of those kind of symptoms, would you say, okay, let's give you some magnesium first before doing other things? Or
Yeah. So I don't know how, but here, like we use a lot of blood work and testing. I like to test to make sure. So usually I'll do like an RBC magnesium serum testing, so we can kind of see where they are at. And because a lot of people are magnesium deficient, right? So, and when we're looking at RBC serum testing, we want to be at the high end of that range. Now the ranges are going to depend on what lab you go to. So I mean, my lab here in Toronto is going to be different than a lab in the States somewhere, but you want to be at the high end of norm, like of that range, because if you're at the bottom end of that range, you're still getting magnesium deficiency symptoms. So, and we want to make sure that we're testing RBC magnesium and not serum magnesium, because when we test serum magnesium, that's only actually looking for 1% of the magnesium in our body. So it's always going to show mid-range because we're only looking at 1%. Whereas RBC magnesium is a more reliable blood work tester, where we can see what's going on in the tissue, which is where magnesium is. Yeah.
Okay. So if someone's concerned, maybe they can just ask their doctor to run that test.
Yeah.
And they'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what, now you said that magnesium kind of sometimes can, is an important mineral that can play a role, in, how other minerals react. And so like what other minerals like are kind of dependent on magnesium?
Well, you have to remember that magnesium is an electrolyte, right? So all your electrolytes, your sodium, your potassium. So when we have an electrolyte imbalance, that means that there's a balance that goes along with sodium and potassium and magnesium and chloride and those types of things. So when we have something that's too low and maybe versus too high, we can see that there's an imbalance. But most times the sodium, potassium, they're kind of tightly regulated. Calcium, we have to be careful with calcium, because if we have too much calcium and we have a deficiency in magnesium, then we're going to be more prone to stones or calcifications, and that's not always a good thing. So magnesium is responsible for kind of dissolving that calcium. And so, a lot of people are like, well, I need calcium and blah, blah, blah. But we also get a lot of calcium from food, even if you are dairy free. So we really have to be careful how much calcium we're bringing in alongside magnesium, because if we don't have enough magnesium, we're not going to be able to kind of break that down.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, I take electrolytes and I always see magnesium on there with the sodium
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all that. So that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's why we sometimes we also have to look at what is causing the deficiency of magnesium, right? So,
Mhm.
and one of the reasons why we are so deficient is because it is an electrolyte. So if we do a lot of sweating and if we have maybe a lot of diarrhea, if we're sick or something like that, we're going to, obviously when we're sweating, we're losing electrolytes and that kind of stuff. So you can deplete yourself of magnesium if you are, let's say, in a sauna, or you're sweating and you're working out all the time and you're not actually replenishing. So that is one of the ways we can become deficient. There's many ways we can become deficient. And because there's so many ways and they have such a big impact, it's why almost 80% of us are deficient in this mineral.
Yes, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because I just started recently going, we have a hot springs up the road. So we've been going a lot. It's been helping my detoxification pathways, but I did notice that I was really, really thirsty. I became dehydrated, and I don't know for sure, but I think it did lead to a bladder infection. Um, but just not getting enough of those minerals, I think, in. So I started my electrolytes again, and the
Yeah.
next step is I'm going to get some magnesium again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
That's important.
yes.
Yeah.
And what is the role between, because I've heard of people talk about this a little bit here and there, the role of magnesium and vitamin D.
Vitamin D is like David. Yes.
Yes,
Not
yes.
David.
No,
Okay.
no, vitamin D. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I know that is a big issue with people, especially lately. We need more vitamin D for our immune system.
Yeah.
And I had heard something about magnesium and vitamin D. You need magnesium
Yes.
to.
Yes. So the reason you need, okay, so we have to think of, we have such a big population that is deficient in magnesium, but we have such a big population that's also deficient in vitamin D. And so
Okay.
when we look at the connection of that is we need magnesium in order to activate vitamin D. So you could be doing all the vitamin D, things that are promoting vitamin D, going outside in the sun, taking your vitamin D3 supplement. But if you're deficient in magnesium, you're not going to be able to convert that vitamin D in the liver because it needs the enzyme that magnesium produces in order to activate the vitamin D. So a lot of times, um, and I've seen this with patients, they'll supplement vitamin D, but then when they go back and they look at their vitamin D thing, it hasn't really moved much, or it's moved very little,
Mhm.
or not at all. And this then tells us that there's some type of absorption issue or some type of a reaction that's not getting completed. So with a magnesium deficiency, you're not going to have enough of that enzyme available. And so when you're taking your vitamin D, yes, your body is getting all of that, but you're unable to convert it to make it active. And it doesn't matter if you're taking active vitamin D3 capsules, it still needs to be activated in the liver for your body to actually make enough magnesium or enough vitamin D to be absorbed for bone health and immune health and all of that stuff.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So should we be taking our magnesium with our vitamin D, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. You can, you could take, wouldn't take it at the same time. Usually vitamin D is a fat soluble. So we would want to be taking that with, a meal that has fats in it. Magnesium can be taken on an empty stomach or with food. It depends on how robust your digestive system is and how you can handle it. So, magnesium can be spaced out during the day. So we could be like morning, afternoon, night. But you probably wouldn't want to take vitamin D at night before bed because that might keep you up. So
Oh,
definitely doesn't need to be taken together. You just need to make sure that you have adequate magnesium stores in order to activate the vitamin D.
okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
would you recommend, like, are there certain times of the day that it's better to take magnesium? I know you said something about, it's good at night.
Yeah. So if you're having sleep issues or you feel like you have a little bit of anxiety before going to bed or having more stress, like, your thoughts start to come and you start to like ruminate, taking magnesium obviously at night before bed is going to be helpful for that. And will also help to just kind of calm down the nervous system and, get you kind of prepared for sleep. But you can take it during the day as well. You can take it in the morning or in the afternoon, and then that can just kind of help you during the day to kind of get that nervous system depletion so that it's not firing all the time and making you wired and anxious and stressed. But then when we see, like if we're using it for hormones or something like that, we're going to use it mostly during the day because that's when we're usually having meals and we're awake and it can do its job. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's certain types of magnesium that we take that are going to do different things. So maybe we want to take them, different times of the day.
Right. And it's also going to be dependent upon what medications you take, right? So
Mhm.
you really need to, and this is why I always encourage like working with a practitioner or working with somebody who has that knowledge. Because, for instance, if you are taking thyroid medication and you take your magnesium, that's not a good combo. You're gonna interrupt how the thyroid medication works, and you're gonna interrupt how the magnesium works. So, you want to make sure that you're working with a practitioner that can, safely give you the dosages and the supplements in a safe fashion that it's not actually affecting the actual medication that you might be taking. So, when you're taking magnesium, you want to be taking it 4 hours away from thyroid medication. You need that time frame. So yeah, it's very dependent upon your health history and of course your medications that you're on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you want to tell us about magnesium that you think is really important? Or actually, is there like particular foods that you would recommend that have magnesium?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, we used to get a lot of our minerals, not just magnesium, from our foods, but due to, just the over farming processes of our soils and decrease just in all minerals in our soil, it's hard to get the required amount of magnesium from food. But I do
Mhm.
always try to promote like there still is some benefit. So it's always good to include like the leafy greens. They're really like good for magnesium. They're loaded with magnesium. Pumpkin seeds are probably your highest amount of magnesium for any type of food that you could eat. So
Oh,
making sure you're getting in, lots of seeds. Flax seeds are high. Avocados are good. Your nuts, Brazil nuts, almonds, those kinds of things, legumes, dark chocolate, and then
oh
of
yeah.
course your fatty fish. So yeah, so there's many foods there that you can definitely get your magnesium from, but I probably wouldn't rely on it like sufficiently. I think it's kind of like a bonus that you can add into your day because we have to remember that we're depleting magnesium throughout the day quite easily. So if we're stressed, we're depleting magnesium. If we eat sugar, we're depleting magnesium. If we're on any type of medications like PPIs or even antibiotics and those kinds of things, that's depleting magnesium. Fluoride depletes magnesium. So we see that there's so many things that deplete magnesium that if you're just relying on food, you're not going to have that. You're going to be in a depletion, like a deficit kind of thing. So, because a lot of us are on, birth control pills or diuretics or statins or all of these things. And these really, really take a lot of magnesium from our bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually personally, I had a big sugar addiction for a long time, and I was always craving chocolate all the time, all the time. And then once I started taking magnesium, I saw those cravings just disappear almost overnight. Um,
Yeah.
and so that, I don't know, that kind of told me that, oh, maybe I was really deficient and I was trying to search for those foods, right?
Yeah, yeah. And we have to think about too with magnesium. Magnesium actually helps to sensitize the insulin receptors, right? So if we have a lot of sugar in the blood, then we're releasing insulin, and insulin comes in and helps to remove some of those sugars and puts it into the cell or stores it somewhere else. And so magnesium just helps to increase the sensitivity of those receptors. And so it is really good for diabetics and for insulin resistance and those kinds of things. And a lot of the times when we're getting cravings and we want to eat late at night, or we have sweet addiction or a salty addiction, that sometimes gives us an indication that insulin is maybe not as regulated as it should be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so what would you recommend? How much would you recommend? I know it's probably different for each person. How much magnesium that we should take.
Yeah, it's definitely different for every individual and depending upon
Mhm.
what it is you're trying to do. So the recommended or the recommended daily amount is 310 to 400 milligrams roughly
Mhm.
for males and females. And that is kind of like the minimum that you need to just sustain magnesium in your body. So, with some patients, I go at up to 800. Some people only need 200. Like it kind of really varies and it depends what you're really trying to do. But this is where working with the practitioner is always best because they're able to guide you as to how much you actually need for whatever condition or issue that's going on in your body. And you also have to take into consideration, again, are you on a medication that's depleting magnesium? Because if you are and then you're only taking the minimum, you're not getting any, right? You're depleting
Yeah.
as fast as you are repleting. So that's also something to keep in consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you said something about earlier about there's some magnesiums that kind of have a bunch of different forms in it. Do we want to stay away from those? I know I've tried one that I like that has about 7 different forms. And it really helped me. But in general, do we want to just stick to one kind, or is it okay to take a blend, I guess?
It's okay to take a blend as long as you know what the dosages of the different blends are. That's important because if you have magnesium chloride in there or something that's not used as often, and if you have no idea what the dosage of any of those are, you really can't distinguish whether or not is the supplement mostly this magnesium or is it this or is it a little bit of everything, right? And so that sometimes involves calling the manufacturer and asking for like the dosages if they don't put it on the bottles. But usually the blends, like I said at the beginning, can also include that oxide. And so we have to be careful to, just look at that and make sure that it's not in there because a lot of the times it's the predominant magnesium in those blends and everything else is like kind of minimized.
Okay.
So really paying attention, reading the labels and doing your due diligence will definitely help you out there. But no, absolutely not. I think a blend is great if it's got the magnesiums that you need and you
Mhm.
kind of want to touch on more than just one individual. Obviously, if we were doing directed work, we would be looking at doing an individual magnesium. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, especially lately, we're looking at like stress and sleep and
Right.
so sometimes we want to hit it all, but maybe we just need a little sleep help,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. And then you would just really would need the one direct form of magnesium. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because if we just want to help sleeping or calming down our nervous system, maybe we don't need that, kind of laxative effect that can
Right.
happen.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, for sure.
I know
So,
when I first start taking the magnesium again, if I haven't taken it for a while, I have to kind of really be careful. Yeah,
yeah.
so I'll take one for a little bit and then I'll take a second one, you know, because I tend to be really sensitive with that laxative effect.
Yeah, and that's definitely something you want to do with magnesium is a lot of the times we have to titrate individuals up. So, and it's just, even sometimes with the bisglycinate, even though it doesn't have that laxative effect, I still at times have to titrate patients because they're just a little bit sensitive and this can just cause, yeah. It's not like outright diarrhea, but we don't need
Yeah,
loose bowels, right?
it's
So we
just
just do
loose.
it gently and we move up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what else should we know about magnesium that you think is really important and that, isn't talked about?
I think that we've talked about a lot, but I think the most important components with magnesium is obviously the vitamin D, because we know vitamin D is just so crucial, especially right now in the world and with an immune issue and an immune system that could be compromised. We also need to be aware of, the things that really deplete our magnesium. So, we don't really want to be in a deficit, because if magnesium is responsible for close to 800 reactions, you got a lot of things that are not working optimally if you don't have sufficient magnesium. Just to give you an indication, it takes 54 molecules of magnesium to process 1 molecule of sugar.
Oh my
So
gosh.
if
Wow.
you're a sugar addict, yeah, you're blowing through magnesium pretty quickly. And if you're
Hmm.
not somehow bringing in magnesium, you're going to be in a deficit, and you will experience symptoms eventually, because there's just so many hands that magnesium has in different reactions in the body. But yeah, it's definitely something that I look at downstream with every patient coming in, especially if they've tried everything, done everything. And it's really, I know it's a mineral that you can buy at most health food stores, even in grocery stores, but it is really, really important that you get the right form, the right dosage, and taken at the right time. And a lot of people dismiss that, and they'll be like, oh, I already took magnesium, it didn't work. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, so what did we take and how much do we take and when do we take it? Because those three things make a big difference. Our bodies are on clocks, right? And so those clocks run on a rhythm. And, if we can dose it appropriately, we can actually do a lot. And again, the amount is very important. But overall, I just really want to portray that it's a really important mineral, and it just has so many functions. And a lot of the times, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's mixed in with other health conditions. And so it's not really looked at
Hmm.
and not usually used right away. And so that's kind of what I'm out to kind of say and bring awareness to, is to, like, we need to look at this mineral and we need to make sure that we are maintaining sufficient levels of this mineral in our bodies at all times. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where I wish it's like you wish you knew this back then when I was
Right.
when I was first having all these health issues, and now I can look back and say, wow, if I had just taken some magnesium, I think I would have had an easier time,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but where can people find you if they want to work with you or check out your work?
I am very active on Instagram. That's usually where I hang out. And I'm at Dr.Barb Woegerer. I also have a website that you can go to, which is just barbwogerer.com. But I pretty much answer most questions and do a lot on the Instagram feed. So that's probably your best bet. And as you mentioned, I did put together a magnesium ebook. So it has a lot of info in there on different conditions and why, and you know, what we need to be doing and why we need to be checking for these deficiencies. So that's available on my Instagram as well. Yeah.
And I will definitely put all those in the show notes and down below. And I really appreciate your time today, Barb.
It's been a pleasure being here.
Yes, and I really think that people will find some value in all this information.
Thank you.